Funding for Big Cypress Swamp, the Western Everglades, is provided by the Collier County Tourist Development Council, the South Florida Water Management District, the Friends of Big Cypress, and the Friends of Fakahatchee.
I'm Clyde Butcher. Welcome to my backyard. I live in the heart of the Big Cypress Swamp, along with a lot of other creatures. It's been my privilege to photograph the Big Cypress for the past 25 years of its diverse landscape. Come join me through this great adventure through the Big Cypress Swamp.
Ours is a water world, from salty seas to freshwater lakes, from the ice caps to the rainforests, from crystal aquifers to the rivers that flow through our veins. Water makes up 70% of the Earth's surface. Who would have guessed that one of the most plentiful things on Earth would suddenly become one of the most valuable? In the new millennium, water and the ecosystems which depend upon it are under siege. This crisis is being played out vividly in our wetlands. South Florida contains some of the most famous wetlands on Earth. Most folks know about the Eastern Everglades, made up of a national park and water conservation areas which encompass a sea of grass stretching as far as the eye can see. Less well known and perhaps even more mysterious and varied is its neighbor to the west, the Big Cypress Swamp. Together, these two areas form one huge ecosystem. Today, over 1 million acres of the richly diverse Everglades in southwest Florida is protected in a variety of public lands. But in the 1960s, this land was slated to be drained and developed, just like many areas of Florida had been over the decades. Through the efforts of those who have a deep connection to this land and had a vision of seeing it protected for years to come, this unique region of the greater Everglades remains intact, a natural area where rare plants and animals can be found, and where people can recreate, escape the hustle and bustle of congested coastal cities, and enjoy the wilds of natural Florida in the Big Cypress Swamp. Big Cypress itself is a jigsaw of wildlife refuges, parks, and sanctuaries, recreational areas, private camps, and Native American communities. Some overlap, each has its own character, but all are bound together by a seasonally flowing river, a sheet of living water moving slowly across South Florida and into the Gulf of Mexico. Together, all the public lands in the Big Cypress Swamp region account for over 1 million acres.
One of the main reasons I started in my black and white photography is when my son was killed in an automobile accident. And I went to Big Cypress to kind of restore my soul. And one of my first pictures I took is called Ochopee. It was taken over this great prairie with cabbage palms and great thundering sky. I didn't realize at the time the whole foreground was cattails, but I thought it was sawgrass.
The photograph became an emblem of Big Cypress. But the butcher's surprise it also contained some important clues about the ecosystem, about what's right with it, as well as what's wrong. Humans are native to Big Cypress. We've been here for thousands of years. The earliest people settled in the 10,000 islands. They dined on the local fish, scallops, oysters. They tossed aside the shells, forming middens, which are still in evidence today. By the 1500s, Spanish conquistadors and English explorers arrived on a feverish quest for gold. For the most part, they were disappointed. No treasure, no mythic fountains. In short, they did not stay, nor did they guess that one day, water would become almost as precious as gold. Man was just one part of the whole. It wasn't until Florida joined the Union that these wetlands became a destination and a target.
And it's not a coincidence that this is where the Seminoles gravitated towards when they had to move south. You know, the U.S. Army soldiers who tromped through, they thought this was, you know, a horrible place. They said it was abominable, a hellhole, you know, a godforsaken swamp that we should leave to the Indians, loathsome and horrible and terrible and impenetrable. But the Indians saw that this was a place that could support life.
The last century has not exactly been a model of restraint.
The Everglades and Big Cypress and South Florida's natural resources were always seen as a commodity to be exploited, not just by evil, greedy people, but by progressive, conservationists, well-meaning people who saw a wasteland. Wetlands were wastelands, and conservation meant the opposite of waste. The dream of South Florida, people saw it as this blank canvas that they could write their dreams on, that they could create this empire of the Everglades with booming communities. All you had to do was just, you know, knock a few holes in some natural dikes and the Everglades would practically drain itself.
In order for new towns to go up, the wetlands had to be made dry. And so the Army Corps of Engineers was brought in to reshape the landscape. And the vast swamp was carved up in a way that drastically disrupted the natural flow of water.
For a century, water was seen as the enemy of the people of Florida. We were all about getting rid of it. How can we drain it? How can we dike it? How can we squirt it this way when we don't want it? How can we capture it? How can we suck it out of the Everglades and out of the aquifers so that we can grow our civilization?
When the Everglades National Park was first proposed, it included a large portion of the Big Cypress Swamp. But Congress did not approve the full purchase, and Big Cypress Swamp portion was subsequently bargained away. 20 years later, this unprotected area faced its most severe threat to date, the building of an international jet port. The hustle and bustle of Miami International Airport, with all its surrounding congestion, was scheduled to be recreated right here, in the heart of the swamp. Dade County officials made speeches about man's manifest destiny to conquer the wilderness. They promised to raise that useless bog and pave it over. Envisioning a city of 500,000 people, they rushed to build the first runway so that the first plane could land.
But they overplayed their hand. They didn't understand that, this was the Earth Day era. And people were starting to understand that, the water we drink, the air we breathe, the landscapes we like, that it's important to people as well as to the bugs and bunnies and yellow-bellied sapsuckers.
A young television reporter named Joe Browder and rising politician Nathaniel Reed were among those who spearheaded the resistance.
Joe saw his first mud stake in Big Cypress. He said he thought it was smiling at him. And he used to just sit there neck deep in one of those swamps and just watch the light change. And he just loved this place. The notion that this silent majesty was going to be overrun by trucks and planes, there was going to be a takeoff every minute. He wasn't going to have that. And so Joe started to fight. He didn't just complain about it, he organized.
The key was helping to find lots of people with very diverse interests, but a common thread of love for the Everglades, who in their own ways could contribute.
Browder managed to build a coalition of unlikely cohorts, all of whom wanted to put a halt to the proposed jetport. Not to mention the real estate boom in surrounding swampland which had been triggered by it. He united some traditional antagonists, environmentalists and hunters, as well as Miccosukee Indians, Hispanics, labor unions, liberals and conservatives. Some local folk proved invaluable when the new developers arrived to survey Big Cypress.
They couldn't carry out a plan like that unless they first surveyed and platted the area. How do surveyors get around out there? Well, they needed somebody in an airboat to drive them out there. Who were a lot of the airboat drivers? People who, at night when they drove their airboats, said they were frogging, but they weren't after frogs, they were after alligators. The alligator poachers, who loved the Everglades as deeply as anyone else, the poachers would call me in my Audubon office and say, okay, so-and-so company has hired so-and-so survey company to go and plat such and such a place. And the word is they're doing it because they want to create a drainage district there. Audubon went out and bought a few acres right in the middle of this place. And then when the people filed to create their drainage district, we sued and said, you can't do that because we bought this land to enjoy it in its natural state. And we won the suit.
Meanwhile, Governor Claude Kirk had just appointed the state's first environmental advisor, Nathaniel Reed. The jetport project was already in the works when Reed flew over the area in a small airplane. What he saw below was disturbing. Immediately upon his return to Tallahassee, Reed pored over hydrological maps of South Florida.
It didn't take a genius to figure out that if the jetport was built and developed, and a high-speed railroad train was built crossing Water Conservation Area 3 to get to Miami, that would interfere with the flow again. The heart of the Everglades system is flow. And so the recognition that I had to change the governor hit me like a lightning bolt. I unfolded on his desk aerial photographs, wonderful drawings that I had prepared showing the flows, and a huge sphere of influence of potential development around the jetport, and a major artery between the jetport and Miami. And I pointed out that the cost of the bond issue for the railroad would bankrupt New York City, much less Miami. The governor became, after about 20 minutes, became very twitchy. He said, I went down there. Where were you? Why didn't you advise me on this earlier? I went down there. I got carried away. It's a big deal for Florida. All the congressional delegation want it. It appears that the Nixon administration wants it. It's a really big deal. Now you want me to say you've got real concerns and qualms, and second, doubts.
The governor agreed to slow the pace of the construction, giving Reed time to put together a team and prepare a series of scientifically based questions for Dade County officials.
And so we went for 10 consecutive questions. The answer was, that question is under study. So I stood up and said, if the answer to the next 92 questions is that the question is under study, please spare me time. I've got a lot of things else to do in life than sit here and listen to that answer. And Hall put his finger out like this and said, you are a white militant, and you're destructive. And he pointed at Browder and said, you're a white terrorist. And with that, the whole room erupted. Everybody stood up, began shaking their hands, fists at him, and he said, you're damn right everything's under study, you bunch of nerds. You're not gonna get an answer out of me today, if ever. And with that, the 80, 90 of us walked out. But of course, the press corps, I wish there was televised. Every writer from Palm Beach Post, Sun Sentinel, Miami Herald was there. The New York Times was there. You name it. The AP, the UPI, everybody was there. It was the damnedest, most unbelievable show. I went to a telephone, called the governor up, and he said, they've blown it.
Reed later became Assistant Secretary of the Interior under Nixon. Once again, he found opportunities to help save the South Florida ecosystem.
You know, Nat took the Secretary of Interior on a trip into the swamp. By getting Wally Hickel to feel it, Nat helped turn around the Nixon administration. And it was one of those against all odds victories.
Stopping the jetport was only one of many battles. Big Cypress was still vulnerable. Many smaller developers didn't give up until the very end.
People with real dreams. These were people without a lot of money who'd invested in a few hundred acres here or a few thousand acres there, and they had these enormous visions of wealth pouring into their land if it could only be drained. Those people got really upset. Some of them put up wanted posters out on the Tamiami Trail saying, God will reward any man who accidentally shoots Joe Browder or Nathaniel Reed or Bob Graham.
They were accused of using underhanded methods, swaying public opinion by bringing Julie Nixon Eisenhower to a low snake-infested lake bed several miles south on the Tamiami Trail, and waded Julie into the Roberts Lake swamp to portray before the nation on TV. Despite all threats by the people who wanted to drain the swamp, the jetport project was halted. Miles of privately owned lands were obtained to protect the swamp. Through this effort, the Big Cypress National Preserve was born. Otherwise, the green western lands would soon look like the overdeveloped East Coast. In an effort to include the local folk who had helped stop the jetport, those who had long made Big Cypress their home and had put themselves on the line to save it, a new concept was born. Why not make it a preserve? A place that would protect the natural world from being paved over, but which allowed limited hunting, which made it possible for camp owners to keep their family cabins, which gave the native people the legal right to continue their way of life. There was a growing recognition that a compromise would be better for this unique region rather than losing it altogether. The goal was to protect a vast area of the swamp while continuing to allow for traditional uses that have occurred for decades, And why alienate the very people you may need to stand up for Big Cypress in the future? But was this doable? Would man reconsider his abusive relationship with nature and turn things around?
Big Cypress National Preserve was created by Congress in 1974, and it's unique in the fact that it's one of the first national preserves within the National Park Service in the United States. And it came about through a compromise between environmentalists and sportsmen's groups and conservationists who all came to the table recognizing that they needed to protect this area of South Florida to ensure the water flow from the Big Cypress Swamp into the 10,000 Islands in Everglades National Park.
This was crucial. The original ecosystem had been vast. It started with the water flowing down the Kissimmee River and into Lake Okeechobee. During the summer storms, the lake would spill over its lower bank in an enormous sheet. This was the beginning of what author Marjorie Stoneman Douglas called the River of Grass. From there, the water would evaporate and form clouds. The winds would blow the clouds west, and the water would return as rain. Because the Big Cypress Swamp Basin is a rain-driven system, it is more pristine than other areas of the Everglades, which rely on water from lakes and rivers to the north. Water off this land flows eastward into important water conservation areas and southwest into the 10,000 islands, replenishing and purifying them both. It's a lifesaver, but the system is not undamaged. Much of the flow has already been disastrously rerouted by the Corps of Engineers, and there was more.
Well, in the 70s, a couple of brothers who had, they'd gotten rich selling their miracle hair tonic that was going to cure baldness. And then they came down to South Florida and started selling miracle swampland, around the Picayune Strand. It was going to be called Golden Gate Estates. They talked about these magnificent restaurants and golf courses and tennis courts and five-star hotels.
Approximately 10,000 lots were sold, but only a few houses went up. With landowners spread around the world, it took the state of Florida 15 years to acquire the properties. Little did they know that in August, this area was under 2 feet of water. The major damage was caused by the construction of roads and canals. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, South Florida Water Management District, and other land management agencies have taken on the restoration challenge. Their staff work in unison with other government agencies, creating partnerships, facilitating communication, and establishing priorities, such as the Picayune Strand State Forest Restoration Program.
And 65 miles of roads have been removed.
The restoration includes large-scale road removal, filling in the existing canals, and restoring the hydrology to the 10,000 island system. The Picayune Strand restoration efforts will revitalize the nursery areas for the finfish and the shellfish, boosting the economy for recreational and commercial fishermen.
There's this sense that the East Coast has gone through a tremendous effort to restore lost conditions, whereas the West Coast, here, we have the opportunity to preserve. And I can tell you, I've been at this for 30 years. Preservation is a lot cheaper, and it definitely is the way to go. Again, it isn't just about the environment, it's about the economy and human health as well.
Rookery Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve and Everglades National Park protect a vast area of the 10,000 island estuary. This is a unique place where the salt water from the Gulf of Mexico and the fresh water from the Big Cypress Swamp mix. The 10,000 Islands estuary is a nursery for tarpon, snapper, and snook, among many other species. but it's located in a rapidly developing region in Collier County. The challenge of protecting the health of the bay while dealing with the pressures of new residential and industrial development is huge. The public land managers within the Big Cypress Swamp work together to protect the incredible diversity of plant and animal life within its boundaries. One of our most recognizable and elusive residents is the endangered Florida panther. These great cats once roamed over the southeastern United States. By the late 1800s, most had been eradicated. People shot them when they preyed upon livestock. But panthers have also been killed off indirectly through loss of habitat by the relentless encroachment of modern civilization. The male panther typically needs 200 square miles of roaming space, the female 80. Where are they going to find that today? And if they were to disappear, what does that bode for the other critters? The panther is what we call an umbrella species. If the panthers are healthy, so is everything else. If we protect panther habitat, then we protect all the other animals that live within its range: deer, black bear, bobcat, wild turkey, raccoons and rabbits, wood storks and wading birds. The list goes on. In 1989, the Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge was established in the heart of the Big Cypress Basin. This unique tract contains 3 types of habitat which panthers need most: prairies, pine lands, and oak hammocks allow the big cats to feed and rest. Controlled burning is practiced in this area, as well as on other tracts throughout the Big Cypress Swamp Basin.
Normally, during the beginning of the growing season, which would be May, June, fires occurred naturally. They would be started by lightning and allowed to burn to their conclusion. We can't do that anymore. So what our fire management activities do is try and mimic those activities with the right timing.
Fire recycles the nutrients. New green shoots attract white-tailed deer, the panther's favorite meal. Cabbage palms, if not controlled, could shade out the greenery on which the deer feed. Around the time the Panther Refuge was created, there were only 20 to 30 Florida panthers left in the wild. There were so few left, and they were so isolated, inbreeding had begun to take a toll. Kittens were being born with genetic defects, such as heart problems and immune deficiencies. The population seemed doomed. The solution? Mail-order brides from Texas. 8 healthy female cougars were imported by wildlife agencies. After 2 years of having offspring, these Texas cougars were removed. Within 10 years, the panther population tripled. The offspring are considered Florida panthers and are protected by the Endangered Species Act. Today, there are over 100 panthers that range through the Big Cypress Swamp. While safely sedated, the panthers are fitted with radio collars. This helps biologists track the animals' movements throughout the rest of the year to see which areas they're using as a home range. Blood is taken as well as hair and skin samples so that the health of the species can be carefully monitored. Have we managed to solve all the problems this rare creature faces? Not by a long shot. As more wilderness is converted to agriculture and neighboring subdivisions go up, the big cat's habitat continues to shrink. And as it shrinks, these territorial creatures can turn on each other. Infighting is the leading cause of death among panthers. Others, sadly, become roadkill.
People are moving into panther habitat. We're having panthers take people's pets and their livestock. Well, it's something that the people out west that live in the Rocky Mountains and areas out there and in California have learned a long time ago. You can live with a large carnivore.
The panther is not the only charismatic inhabitant of Big Cypress. The Fakahatchee Strand is home to 44 kinds of orchids. Most mysterious of all is the ghost orchid.
I've seen a ghost orchid in a little rain shower, and little water droplets will hit it and it'll just bounce like a ballet dancer. We've seen now about 310 different ghost orchids. Fakahatchee is the orchid capital of the United States. It is the largest strand swamp within the Big Cypress swamp system. Basically, strand swamps are elongated channels or shallow valleys in the limestone that have been eroded over the past 5,000 years.
Strand swamps have several features which make it an ideal home for orchids and bromeliads. First, there is the water, a seasonally flowing river. In winter, as the leaves fall from the trees, they sink to the bottom and become peat and muck. During the dry season, the riverbed acts as a sponge, releasing moisture and defending the tropical plants against fire and drought. A canopy overhead provides shelter. This green umbrella holds in the humidity and protects the more delicate plants from frost in the coolest months. It's also a shield against the wind and the sun, which can dry everything out with its UV rays. Most of these plants are called epiphytes, which means they grow on trees without causing any harm. They were brought here by migrating birds from South America and the Caribbean islands. Some plants may have arrived on the winds of hurricanes. There is only one known insect which can pollinate the ghost orchid, the giant sphinx moth. When it hatches, the moth will have a 6-inch wingspan, but its tongue is even longer, which is why some people call it the flying tongue.
When the giant sphinx moth flies up to a ghost orchid, it has to ram its head under the anther cap and put its tongue down the long nectar spur of the ghost orchid to get that high energy sugar reward. It's like jet fuel to fuel them to fly to another flower.
As the moth feeds, pollen sticks to its head. When the insect visits another orchid and pokes its head under another cap, the pollen comes off. Bingo! The orchid has been fertilized.
Every wild adult orchid you see out there is really a winner of the lottery, because the chances of any one seed surviving are millions to one. Has to land in just the right place for sunlight and temperature and humidity, and it has to land on fungi.
An interaction between the orchid seed and this fungi allows both plants to survive.
For me, it all got started with the romance of the ghost orchid and how Mike did it. He got you to the location, and once you got to the location, he'll tell you, okay, now you look for it. So it made part of the excitement, and then when you look at this beautiful white flower dangling from a flower spike coming out of these roots, I was just in awe of it. And I fell in love. And I've been lucky enough and fortunate enough to be one of the few people that have been out here in the middle of the night to smell its fragrance, which is a beautiful scent. We all try always to describe it. It's really funny when you get 4 or 5 men out here trying to explain a perfume. We came in, must have been about 8 o'clock,
Yeah, it was
9
after
o'clock.
sunset.
It was just after sunset, and we would stay out here till almost 2 o'clock in the morning.
Long time.
Every 30, 40 minutes, climb up the ladder, go and sniff this ghost, and then your favorite question to ask, what does it smell like? You got your notepad out, okay, what does it smell like?
I'm ready.
I'm like, well, it's really hard to explain. It's a very clean smell. The only thing I can think of is it smell like a baby perfume. Just very, it's the only word we can come up with. It smells very clean. What word have you come up with?
I can't do any better. It's just very, very clean.
Very
we
clean.
Finally got your girlfriend to go up there on the ladder, and so we waited for her to come down. And what did she say?
We got a woman's perspective
yeah,
for a minute.
Perspective. They know how to, talk about odors or at least describe them. We don't even know colors. and so we're expecting to find out. Finally, we're going to know what a ghost orchid, smells like.
No pat in hand.
That is right. And what did she say? Clean. Almost dropped the notebook.
The warm, wet South Florida climate, which allows the ghost orchid to flourish, also has its drawbacks. It serves as an incubator for many less desirable invaders. When Brazilian pepper was sold as a yard plant back in the 1930s, the birds gobbled it up and spread it around. Solid stands of Brazilian pepper now cover tens of thousands of acres in the Big Cypress swamp. This has led to an ongoing battle. In order to ensure the biological integrity within the Big Cypress swamp, land managers must constantly deal with the intruders.
That's what we're trying to do here in Big Cypress, is get rid of a lot of this stuff that doesn't belong here. And we're making good progress.
Even native plants can become a menace. As it turns out, Clyde Butcher's iconic photograph was made possible through the incursion of phosphorus-based fertilizer. It seeped down from tomato farms, which flourished during the 1950s. And that's how the cattails took off.
There was one point where I said to myself, maybe I shouldn't be showing this because it's all from the cattails. Then I said, well, maybe it's important to show it. The cattails are a necessary part of the Everglades. They just aren't necessary in large quantities. When you see a large quantity, you know man's been messing around. When I'm creating a photograph, I think it's important to create a space so a person can feel like they're there. If you don't have that space, they don't have a connection. And that's what I'm trying to do, is connect people with the Everglades, Big Cypress, Fakahatchee, Corkscrew, all these different places. If they can't feel the connection, how are they going to feel it's important?
Whoa. Okay, let's move into this big, nice open area here. Find your spot and hold still right there. Was the water hotter or cooler?
Colder.
Why? Cooler, you said, Turner. Why?
Jump right here.
Some more shade in here. And who said it got deeper? Why did the water get deeper here? What happened?
Because there's bigger trees, so it needs to be deeper.
Okay, I want
The staff of the Big Cypress National Preserve and their partners in government work in unison to make education a priority.
It's not a job that can be done by any one agency or any single organization. We really have to try to engage the mainstream public in this idea of stewardship for the coast. And people can do that through individual actions, they can do it through community involvement, or by volunteering and helping out in a variety of ways.
How do you live in panther habitat? And you can do it safely. So we've started outreach efforts through town hall meetings. It just takes some precautions. It means locking your pets up at night or putting them in pens. It's an education that we've got to do, not just to protect people's lives, but to also protect the animals that live down here and whose habitat they've moved into.
In this spirit, park experts host wildflower walks. There are birding festivals. Staff biologists and botanists lead school groups and scout troops on field trips.
A lot of them have a lot of fears before they come out. They think this is going to be a big, dark, scary, smelly swamp with all kinds of alligators and snakes and scary things. We go in the classroom beforehand to give a program, and that kind of dispels some of those fears. And then once they get out here and step to this spot and look into the swamp and see this clear water and see how beautiful it is, they kind of calm down. We use radio telemetry to track a Florida panther, which is a beanie baby with a radio transmitter on it. They use the same equipment as our biologist uses to track the Florida panther. We use GPS and landmarks to record the location of the panther once we find it. And then we start in doing activities on animals, vegetation, water, soil, and weather. I'm hoping that this gives them that foundation to build on and an interest in the natural world and create an awareness that maybe will carry through and they can be better stewards in the future. Did you realize that you were coming to a national preserve today?
Yep.
Yeah, Big Cypress National Preserve. It's part of the National Park Service.
To know the swamp, you have to get into the swamp.
Surprise number one, air conditioning in the swamp.
For me, the highlight of any week is a swamp walk with people that want to see the Big Cypress Swamp. And they're always in for a treat because they're going to enjoy some portion of the Amazon of Florida. And that's part of what the Big Cypress Swamp experience does for you. It forces you to slow down and just take it in real time. I tell people on the swamp walks, we have to do everything out here slowly in order to be safe and have fun.
All right, thank you.
Very much. People don't have any idea what Big Cypress is until you walk through it and feel it. You've got to be connected, and doing those swamp walks really connects people. And as we take the people through the swamp walk, we stop. They explain some of the ecosystems, and they try to make everybody be quiet for 5 minutes. It's hard to get people in this civilization quiet for 5 minutes, but it's pretty effective. And all of a sudden, they start breathing into it a little bit more. So all of a sudden you hear all kinds of little animals and crickets and frogs and gators and birds, and it'll all come if you just stay quiet.
One little boy said, you know, I learned from this field trip that there's more to just staying inside and watching TV. It's called paraphyte, and it's really important stuff out here in the swamp. In fact, right here where we are, where the water isn't too deep, this is actually going to dry down. Probably about March, April, May. This is going to be really dry.
For folks who love the outdoors, the Big Cypress Swamp region offers countless recreational opportunities, including the head of the Florida Trail System.
If you still want a wellness experience, I can take you out there and show you areas where you can go and have wellness experience. When people get to know that place and come out there, some of them get hooked immediately. There's places I guarantee you can hike and you're not going to run into anybody.
Old friends Stephen DeLine and James Hoss Cartwright are the longtime co-owners of a hunting cabin on the 3 acres within the preserve. The family camp is a place to relax and to listen to old stories, to hunt and explore the surrounding wilderness. It qualifies as exempt land, and their rights to it are ensured by a congressional mandate, which recognizes that hunters and sportsmen worked alongside conservationists and environmentalists to help create the Big Cypress National Preserve.
Hunting and off-road vehicle use are allowed within the preserve. Typically, the hunting season takes place in the fall of the year, and then, of course, turkey hunting takes place in the spring of the year.
Off-road vehicles are allowed within Big Cypress National Preserve along a designated backcountry trail network. Recreational use continues to allow for traditional pursuits such as hunting and access to backcountry camping.
We also provide for the traditional and customary rights of the Miccosukee and Seminole tribes of Florida.
Leroy Henaheho Osceola, a descendant of the famous chief, and his wife Cassandra, are raising their family in Big Cypress.
I've been teaching them since they were little. They know how to do certain things. I'm getting ready to teach them how to do the silver now. But they do the carving, and they can build the houses, the chikis, stuff like that. So it's pretty good, because their relatives that live on the reservation, they don't know how to do much. They don't really have any chance to learn, because everything's given to them, you know. We're trying to keep our identity strong so outside people don't tell us and come to us and tell us who we are. There's just a handful of us now, because everybody migrated into other areas. Well, I worry about how the kids or the next generations are going to survive, and that's what I think about. That's how we were taught when we were little, and that's how we've always been taught, my grandparents and my fathers and all that. So that's what we live by.
In addition to being an oil painter, Osceola is also a traditional craftsman. In his gallery on the Tamiami Trail, he creates silver jewelry and wooden sculptures.
I do sterling silver jewelry. I used to see the pictures of people wearing them and stuff like that, and my mother had pieces that her father had done, so that's where it gave me the idea to start it up again, because nobody does anything like that anymore. If you see one of the photographs of one of my grandfathers, Chief Osceola, he's wearing them. You can't forget where you come from, so that's, to me, it's part of history, what I'm leaving behind. But I can say these words because I live out here. This is my land. I'm not some foreigner coming here and, you know, making up stuff. That's what my grandfathers told them a long time ago.
The cultural and spiritual identity of the Osceola family and other Miccosukee and Seminole people is embedded in the Big Cypress Swamp landscape. And they are not the only ones who feel this way.
I'm not ashamed to say I love that place. Several of the people that I grew up with and people I came to know, old-timers, felt likewise. Some of them were totally uneducated people. They'd fought in the wars, came back. They had all kinds of mental stress from being in Korea and World War II, and that was their sanctuary. That kept them sane, they said, going out there and just getting away. I call it the Cypress Cathedral. That's where I find God, feel closest to the Creator, is out there. To us old-timers, it's the Big Cypress Swamp. We call this place over here now the Western Everglades.
like visiting the Garden of Eden for a 15-year-old boy. I mean, you know, clouds of birds, and alligators lying in every ditch, and snakes and tarpon rolling in the canals adjacent to Tamiami Trail. I mean, how much better does it get?
We just couldn't live without going to the Glades, going to the Big Cypress, going to the Bay.
It made your heart sing.
It enriched us. It made us more than we were. It was great.
There's no place else in the world like the Big Cypress Swamp. It's really fantastic. The biological diversity here is incredible. It has great biological productivity because it's a wetland-based system. It's where the tropics meet the temperate zone. So there's just no place else on the planet where you find this combination of habitats.
People ask me all the time, why black and white? When my son was killed and I went to black and white, I started doing it coming from the heart. It keeps everything the same importance. A tree, the sky, the water, it's all variations of grays. And it becomes one. And nature is one. So when the black and white brings it to a oneness that you can understand everything is interrelated.
Whether the incentive to take care of the Big Cypress Swamp and the Everglades is scientific, recreational, spiritual, or economic, there is profound concern over the future of this priceless ecosystem. Restoration of the South Florida wetlands has stumbled badly in the political and economic climate of the new millennium.
The environmentalists, they like to say that the Everglades is a test. You know, if we pass, we may get to keep the planet. It's going to be a test of our scientific ability, you know, our planning ability, test of sustainable development, whether we can say, we can step back a little bit and say, hey, there are some places that man's footprint cannot go. South Florida is the model for multi-billion-dollar ecosystem restorations that are supposed to revive the Great Lakes, Puget Sound, the San Francisco Bay Delta, the upper Mississippi River, and Louisiana's coastal wetlands. If we can't save South Florida, you know, the most studied wetland in the world, what can we save?
I like to tell people that the world's round. Everything we do, everything everybody else does comes around. We don't act conscientiously to do the right thing. Why are other countries going to do the right thing?
South Florida is where we're going to figure out whether man can live in harmony with nature. Because if Collier County and Miami-Dade County can't figure out how to have enough water for their needs and leave some left over for the gators and panthers and the rest of the bugs and bunnies, it's really hard to imagine that Israel and Syria are going to be able to do it. And in the 21st century, water is going to be as precious as oil.
In Collier County, tourism alone is over $1 billion a year. Fishing and boating, for example, $200 million a year coming into this county alone. And when you think about how those industries tie into sustaining the health of these estuaries, they're vitally linked. We can't have a strong economic base in tourism and fishing and boating without having a healthy estuary like Rookery Bay and the 10 Islands.
Greed and short-sightedness almost destroyed this paradise. But more and more people are waking up to the idea that it's in our own best interest to save these natural places. The drinking water upon which South Florida depends is located in the aquifers under these swamps. The spirit of cooperation has saved Big Cypress Swamp in the past. Its future may depend upon new coalitions between environmentalists and the traditional community, between positive local action and promises kept by the federal and state governments.
You know, there's already this broad political consensus from right-wingers and left-wingers and buffalo wingers. Everybody wants to save the Everglades and Big Cypress.
The question is, can we learn to work together for the greater good? Can we learn to live with our environment? Will my grandchildren be able to experience these great landscapes? The answer is in me and you.
Funding for Big Cypress Swamp, the Western Everglades, is provided by the Collier County Tourist Development Council, the South Florida Water Management District, the Friends of Big Cypress, and the Friends of Fakahatchee.